Welcome back, guys. Today's video, I actually want to break down my new training program for this coming training block. New is probably something that we need to take with a pinch of salt because it's actually not that new. The only difference is we are working with slightly less volume and we have increased training frequency. So now I am trialing 3 days on, 1 off. In past, I have always run push-pull, rest, legs, rest, which is a 10-day rotation where you train every body part every 5 days. So now increasing the frequency, every body part will now be trained every 4 days with a slight reduction in training volume. So of actual working sets across each session. Now, we are 2 weeks in, so I wanted to wait a couple of weeks before I actually do this video for you all, sharing my training with you and potentially giving you ideas to put into your own training. But I wanted to see how my body actually tolerates higher frequency with the volume I have allocated to this training program, and so far it's been absolutely tremendous. It is a lot more demanding, so the focus that I need to put into my recovery modalities like stress management, sleep, time management, daily routine is even higher. But this is where I actually thrive, and I think this is where I do like to welcome a challenge. And sometimes we often get into almost a little bit of safety net where we always put in the work, right? But I truly believe that you do not know what you are capable of until you truly try it. So if there's a way to work harder or even test yourself, I think you should often do it. And this is exactly what my goal is with this training program, is testing my limits and testing what I can tolerate, what I can recover from, and still be able to progress over time. So far, 2 weeks in, we are making good steady progression across every single session. I am in world of pain pretty much all the time, but that's what we do and that's what we live for, right? So I want to give you a bit of a breakdown. I have 2 variations set. So I've got push A and push B, pull A, pull B, legs A, legs B. So I've got 2 variations of each session. The push days and pull days are very, very similar in the setup and structure. Leg days, this is where I have had to work in a slight different fashion, where one session is a little bit more quad dominant and the other session is a little bit more hamstring dominant, because leg day recovery is already pretty much maxed out. And this is where I needed to be very smart with exercise selection and volume allocation to those exercises to be able to see good recovery session to session and be able to actually come in the gym and make progress, which is always the priority. Soreness is not really that relevant, I'll be honest with you guys. What is the most relevant is your ability to progress your lifts and progress your stimulus and progress your volume over time. So the way I like to try and progress my volume is always through repetitions and through load, mostly. When I do get towards end of a training block and I am unable to, or I struggle to then progress in a fashion where I'm struggling to get extra reps here and there, this is where I actually may add in some rest pause sets and set extensions, which will in essence add in more of a challenge as we do extend those sets. But again, that is more so added towards back end of a training block after numerous weeks of steady progression across the board. So let's go over push A. I want to go over both push A and push B first before we move on to pull days, because both sessions, I think following the structure, have to complement one another. So the exercise selection on each given day needs to complement the other session and not take away from it in a fashion. So push A. This is where I am still opting to do isolation work before my heavy compound lifts, simply to reduce load exposure. With higher frequency in training, I want to still be able to move the load and have max work capacity in one session, however, not every 4 days, because this way, my connective tissue would definitely take a little bit more of a beating than I would like. So this session, we do have a prime lateral raise to start with. I always like to start with lateral work because your delts can never be big enough and can never be wide enough, let's face it. Then this session, we've got prime pec deck to follow on as exercise number 2. Exercise number 3 is incline dumbbell press. Exercise number 4, flat converging chest press. And then on the second set of that, we do have deficit press up as well. And that is not a set extension, that is a separate set, but again, not very demanding. And it's just another way to add quality volume tagged onto my chest where it is a body part I'm trying to bring up. Following on from that, we've got narrow grip standing chest press, which should be a tricep press really. It's not a great option for chest work because it doesn't converge and the resistance profile more so is suitable for a tricep press exercise. So narrow grip tricep press, keeping the elbows tucked nice and tight. Again, it's not an isolation exercise. You will still work some of your pecs to a degree in your front delt, but predominantly the focus here is more of a tricep compound exercise. Then after that, we follow on with overhead cable extension and then behind the back single arm cable lateral. 16 working sets in total, not counting my deficit press up because it's just simply not volume that I think is worth accounting for, as not all training volume is created equal. What one exercise will do for you in comparison to another will be completely worlds apart, especially when it comes to some stimulus and fatigue it may create. Now, push B, the setup and the layout of the sessions is very, very similar, but here we do flip things around where we do start again with a lateral raise, but then after the lateral raise, we do have low incline dumbbell press. So this session, I am specifically looking for maximum load exposure with the dumbbell press. So we'll start with a lying cuffed cable lateral, and I do this on the cables, always either lying on the floor or on the bench. Follow that on with a low incline dumbbell press, and then second exercise in, we do have a incline machine chest press. Third exercise is the dip, and I think a dip is generally one of the best overall compound exercises you can do for both your chest and tricep development, especially when you go into the deep ranges of motion with a dip. It's a fantastic exercise and it will completely bulletproof your shoulders. And if you can really expose yourself to that deep end range on a dip with some load, it will definitely have merit and carry over into all of your other exercises. I think majority of people have poor range of motion and poor mobility down to training with very short ranges of motion within their actual exercises. My mobility is actually really good, and that's because I do take pride in the ranges of motion I'm able to achieve across exercises that I do, and I think it does have merit in my mobility. So your training should be your mobility, in short. Following up with an incline cable fly and then a cable overhead press, which now is a JM press on a Smith machine, and then finishing off on machine laterals for 2 sets to finish the workout off with. And that is 16 total working sets. So for me, that is very much volume I can recover from. I have to be very, very careful in not taking any sets past failure and simply staying calm and collected within the workouts. So moving on to pull days. A lot of volume is allocated towards my lat work, although you cannot completely isolate your lat. Whenever you go into any back exercise, almost your entire back musculature will work. However, some exercises will actually target a specific area of your back more than the other. This is where some specificity can have great benefit with splitting your actual exercises up into lat focused and upper back focused. Now remember guys, you cannot isolate just one division of your back to that degree, but you can target one division of your back more over the other. So pull A does have less exercises, but still same volume as other pull session. This session in particular is very balanced between both upper back and lats. We still have got somewhat more lat work because the last exercise is an upper back exercise, but it does tie in a lot of lat work as well. So it's somewhat of a mix of both, right? The other pull session, that is where specifically we do have a lot more lat work. One thing you'll notice with both my pull days is it's very, very heavy on rowing movements, simply because I do feel like I get more out of rows and I specifically connect better with them. I'm able to get more range of motion with them as opposed to a pull down. Generally for pull downs, I always train the lat unilaterally. Upper back work, I do tend to stick to rows as priority because I can get more out of them. So this session is a single arm cable pull down followed by Cybex dual axis row, and then single arm Cybex eagle row, then neutral grip Prime row, again, that's the row that generally will tie in a lot of lat and upper back, your thoracic lat in particular, so your upper lat fibers, because you are pulling from a low to high plane of motion. To finish off on, we do have one set of shrugs, then we'll follow that up with cable preacher curl, myo rep sets, and then prime reverse pec deck, 2 working sets. So we've got 17 working sets total here, 2 sets of pull down, 3 sets of single arm row, 3 sets of row, 3 sets of single arm row, and then 3 sets of upper back row / thoracic lat row. 1 set of actual shrug, 3 bicep, and 2 rear delt. So on paper, again, doesn't look like much. However, it's still a lot of work. But overall, the session length and volume is slightly lower to what I've had before, meaning that I'm a little bit more efficient with my time spent in the gym. Now, pull B session. This is where we do have slight variety and extra exercise. So we've got 5 exercises here. And specifically in this session, we do target the lat even more in comparison to the other sessions. So we've got 2 sets of single arm cable row. We follow that up with chest support T-bar row, again upper back focused with 1 set of shrug. Then we've got single arm machine pull down, lat focus, followed by prime seated upper back row, which again does tie in a little bit of lat work in there. And then we finish off on single arm plate loaded row, again lat focused, for 2 working sets. So we've got pretty much 7 direct working sets for lats, 4 direct working sets for upper back, 1 set of shrugs, 3 sets of bicep curls. Again, in this session we do focus on more so lengthening bias, so having the cable set pretty much at knee height and facing away from the cable, keeping the upper arm behind us. Check that exercise out on one of my videos. And then we've got the reverse cable fly to finish off on 2 working sets as well. So we've got 17 total working sets in this session as well. Last but not least, guys, we've got our leg days. And this is where I do have a little bit more variance in play. Both leg days do start with a leg curl variation. I always start my leg days with a leg curl variation, simply to get quality hamstring volume. Your hamstrings, just like your lateral delt, your side delt, can never be big enough, especially as a competitive bodybuilder. Bigger the hamstrings, the better. It's as simple as that. So 3 working sets of a hamstring curl, both for legs A and B. We follow that up with 2 working sets of leg extension on legs A, and then 3 working sets on legs B. And this is where the sessions will vary slightly, because on legs A, after the 2 working sets of leg extensions, we do have 1 working set of safety bar squats, and I do have the safety bar squat set in more of a position where it mimics a front squat. So I do have to stay upright, and I do get plenty of knee flexion there. Again, focusing massively on trying to get as much knee flexion, as much challenge to the quad as possible. Then we follow that up with a leg press. Again, a very quad dominant stance with feet nice and low, allowing to get as much knee flexion as possible. So legs A session is a lot more focused on movements that allow us to get much more knee flexion and direct heavy work on quads with no heavy hip hinges in this session. So after the actual arsenal leg press, we do have some lying hamstring curl. Main reason for that is it does decompress your spine, and again, additional hamstring volume. I am looking to bring up my hamstrings as well as overall size of my leg development. So I do have an adequate amount of volume in both days for my hamstring work, but both sessions do vary to try and keep my knees fresh and try and keep recoverability session to session on point, so I am able to give my best performances at the big challenging lifts like the squat patterns and leg presses. Now, legs B variation, this is where we do have a slight variance, where we've got less exercises to a degree, but it's still a very challenging session. So we've got, again, lying hamstring curl to begin with, 3 working sets, then 3 sets of leg extension. The main reason why I have 3 sets of leg extension here is because the leg extension that I use, a Cybex leg extension on this session, which it's not very heavy in the stretch. It's more so mid to short and range bias, which doesn't create as much muscle damage in comparison to the session that I have before, which is legs A, using the prime leg extension, which is loaded in mid to lengthen range, which is much heavier in the stretch, which again, we know that from anecdotal evidence, which is what we do in the gym and our experience, that you do get more sore from simply challenging your muscle in the stretch. And it is much more damaging and much more fatiguing. So I am splitting up my exercises across both sessions to complement each session, so I'm able to recover from it and put in some solid performances across all of the working sets. So legs B, we've got 3 sets of Cybex leg extensions, and then we'll follow that with 1 single set of Cybex leg press, which again, it's very, very heavy in that mid to shorten range. So it gets heavy as you come into that lockout. It's not that extremely heavy in the stretch. And then my favorite hip hinge variation of all time, which is the deficit RDL. The goal of your hip hinges is not bending down or trying to train your lower back. Your lower back will be under tremendous pressure and stress either way. However, your goal with any hip hinge is reaching full hip flexion. So once your hips cannot travel further back, that is your range of motion set. So always determine your range of motion by your hip movement. Hips travel fully back, full hip flexion, pause, and then travel forward to extend through the hip. Use your hips as your main focal point for the range of motion for the RDLs. Again, if you are working with full range of motion, you probably will need to do a deficit RDL. I see a lot of people do a lot of RDLs with extremely short range of motion where they're barely getting the hips back and they're somewhat just bending over with the weight slightly. It's not really going to give you much favors for your hamstrings. The goal here is to take our hamstring through as much range of motion as possible, especially challenging them in that stretch when your hips are fully shifted back. And again, the quality stimulus I get in my hamstring and glutes from that is immense. So the main difference between both leg days here is 1 session, we do have a hip hinge in place, which is extremely demanding. And other session, we do have a squat pattern in place with a safety bar, which again is extremely demanding. So both sessions do vary slightly, with 1 session being very, very quad dominant with the way we train them and more so resistance profiles as well. And the second session is somewhat easier on the quads, still just as challenging, but more stretched loading focus on the hamstrings with the deficit RDL. And both leg days actually are finished with myo rep sets on the seated leg press as a calf press. So that is, guys, all she wrote. We've got 16 working sets for both push days, 17 working sets for both pull days, and 11 working sets for both leg days, bringing the total training volume to probably around 90 sets per week, which isn't high, it isn't low, it's just right. So I am kind of pushing the boundaries here with what my body can tolerate. And again, if there's a way to test myself, if there's a way to see if I can tolerate more work and handle more work and do more work, I will do it. Because again, you don't know until you do know. So sometimes you do have to test yourself and find out if you're able to actually tolerate more work. And sometimes it may pay off, sometimes it may not. Your biggest telltale sign for your progression is always your ability to progress your lifts. If that diminishes, I may need to either lower my training volume or I may need to lower the training frequency again. But again, the biggest determining factor is my local progression. I need to be progressing my lifts in one way or another, whether that's improved execution, more load on the bar, more repetitions, or even set additions. Guys, I hope this helps. This is my new training program. Use it. If you do use it, let me know how you get on. And again, guys, remember, this is working sets only. This is not including warm-up sets or feeder sets. If you want to know about warm-up sets and feeder sets, get on my Instagram. I do always give tips on that and how you should approach that. Guys, thank you so much. Please subscribe to the channel, like, and show me some love. Take care. Peace out for now.